Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're diving into something that I think is on every language learner's mind. We're on a mission, really, for you, the learner.
Mm-hmm.
And we're moving far, far beyond the classroom. We're not talking about textbook definitions of language ability.
Right. No multiple choice grammar quizzes today.
Exactly. You might be intensely curious about fluency, but we're not talking about that kind you can prove with a dusty B2 certificate.
No, this is the real world stuff. And we got this fantastic source that it completely bypasses all those academic metrics.
It really does.
It lays out a real world, deeply immersive definition of fluency. It's basically a checklist.
A checklist, yeah.
Yeah.
A checklist of 12 situations.
Exact. 12 sort of unexpected emotional and cognitive tests.
And the idea is, if these fundamental shifts start happening to you, you're not just, competent.
Yeah.
You are truly operating within the language and the culture.
That's the key. And the source frames it so well. It says these aren't skills you actively learn.
Yeah.
They're signs that your brain has already done the heavy lifting. It's been integrating the language behind the scenes.
So these 12 indicators, they signal that deep cognitive and cultural adoption. They show the language has become, like an unconscious tool?
An unconscious tool. That's a perfect way to put it. What's so fascinating here is the focus on internalization.
Right.
We're looking at signs that the language has stopped being a task.
Right.
Something you perform under conscious effort.
Like a math problem you have to solve every time you speak.
Precisely. And it started being a mechanism, something that just operates automatically, like breathing or, riding a bike. These are the real markers of assimilation.
So the mission for us today is clear. We're identifying these 12 surprising indicators.
Yep.
We're going to categorize them into 3 core areas for you. We've got social mastery, cognitive shifts, and then practical verification.
There's a nice framework.
And the goal is to give you, the listener, a clear, actionable checklist for what true effortless fluency actually feels like.
And we really want you to treat this list as like a living document. This isn't just theory.
Right.
As you go on your language journey, you should be actively watching for these situations. And when you realize you've hit one,
You celebrate it.
it means your brain has fundamentally leveled up. And now you can set your sights on achieving the next one on this list.
Okay, so let's get into it. Part 1.
Let's do it.
Let's start where the journey, I think, for many learners begins and also where it often ends.
Cultural integration.
Cultural integration and social mastery. These indicators, they're less about your vocabulary size and way more about how native speakers actually see you.
Right. Can you navigate those subtle, sometimes dangerous waters of social nuance without, causing offense or just confusion?
Exactly. Which brings us to our very first indicator.
And this one, number 1, it immediately raises the stakes.
True
Fluency, it says, requires the mastery of taboo.
meaning.
Meaning you know how, but more importantly, when to swear appropriately.
It's a brilliant place to start because it just throws out that whole idea that fluency is about being perfectly polite and articulate.
Totally. It's all about context. So why do you think using strong language correctly is such a profound signal of competence?
Well, I think it's because it's tied so deeply to the emotional and situational register, right?
Exactly. Anyone can go learn a lot of insults from a dictionary.
Sure.
A novice, though, they might use a phrase that's like deeply offensive in a really casual setting.
Or the opposite.
Or the opposite, yeah.
Yeah.
They fail to use an appropriate, contextually mild swear word, which might be essential for, say, showing camaraderie or a shared frustration in that culture.
And the source material has a great little story about this.
It does.
The speaker recalls when she was just starting out with Spanish, and she absorbed a lot of common swear words just by imitating her ex. And he used them a lot, but not, in a malicious or aggressive way. They were just sort of everyday emotional punctuation. So she had the word.
She had the vocabulary, but she lacked the social license.
The cultural volume knob. I love that.
That's it. So she tried to use those words in situations where they just weren't appropriate.
Yeah.
And she immediately got told off or corrected by native speakers.
And that moment of using it wrong, that's the immediate visceral signal of being an outsider, isn't it?
It is. It tells the listener, this person doesn't get our social rules.
I think the biggest hurdle here is probably understanding the weight of a word.
For sure.
In some cultures, words that we might consider, pretty minor swearing in English, they carry heavy historical or religious baggage.
Right. And then in others, you have these incredibly crude words that are used as like terms of endearment among close friends.
Yeah.
And you have to navigate the generational gap, the regional differences, the difference between what you say in public and what you say in private.
So the moment you can use it right, like using a mild expletive to show you're shocked,
Mhm.
or just to build that camaraderie,
Or knowing to avoid a really offensive term in mixed company.
that's when you're showing you get the culture's emotional topography.
Yeah, in a way that just memorizing grammar can never achieve. It's a measure of really high-level situational awareness, social competence.
Okay, so if swearing is about emotional calibration, the next indicator, this is number 4, is about cognitive and cultural decoding.
Ah,
True
yes.
fluency allows you to understand and participate in humor.
This is a big one. And the source calls it out as a major difficulty, and it should be.
Why is it so hard?
Because humor is maybe the most heavily layered form of communication we have. It's built on cultural references, shared history, political context,
Slang, double meanings.
all of it. Things that the translation just absolutely butchers. You often have to process a sentence twice.
Okay.
Once for the literal meaning, and then a second time for the cultural pun or the irony that's hidden inside.
And the pressure is the speed, right? You have
Yeah.
to do it fast.
The speed is everything. And we have this specific, really painful anecdote here that just illustrates the struggle perfectly.
Yeah, I remember this one.
So the speaker, she's feeling pretty good about her Spanish, reasonably fluent, and she goes to a live comedy show in Seville.
The comedian was Ernesto Sevilla.
That's right. And she went with a big group of friends, totally ready to laugh, ready to fit in.
And it did not go well.
It was a brutal baptism by fire. The comedian had a very thick accent, spoke really, really quickly,
Oh, no.
and she just sat there surrounded by all this laughter, realizing she didn't understand a bloody word.
That is the moment of truth, isn't it?
It is. Your textbook fluency just collapses under the weight of spontaneous, fast-paced, regionally specific speech.
That feeling of being like the only person not in on the joke in a room full of shared laughter.
Hmm.
It's so isolating.
It's profound, and it tells you your internal processing speed just isn't there yet.
And it's not just the vocabulary you missed.
No, not at all. It's the rhythm, the cadence, the deep cultural reference that hit all the native speakers at the same time. You're still processing the setup when they're already laughing at the punchline.
So the source says this is the ultimate test.
It is. You know you're truly fluent when you can sit through a fast-paced regional comedy show and laugh at all the jokes.
At the same time as everyone else.
At the exact same time, the bar is set astronomically high here.
Which leads to that humorous suggestion that, to get this, you might need to live in the country for 10 years, get married, and have kids there.
Right, because that hyperbole lands. Understanding the true inside jokes of a culture often feels like it requires a near lifelong commitment.
And even the speaker admits, I sometimes don't understand jokes in my own language.
And that self-awareness just confirms how high the bar is when you're talking about thick regional accents and rapid, unadapted speech. If you can decode that, your cognitive systems are running at native speed.
Okay, so moving from that kind of proactive cultural test to a more reactive one. This is indicator number 5.
Right. And this is a huge psychological milestone. You know you're fluent when people stop adapting their language level for you.
So they stop talking to you like you're a student.
Exactly. They stop talking to you like you're still in language class. When you start a conversation, they no longer simplify their vocabulary or, slow down their pace.
Or avoid idioms.
Right. They speak in a really relaxed way.
It's like you've earned their conversational respect.
That's a great way to put it. When native speakers see you as genuinely competent, that your input speed and your output clarity are high enough, they relax their guard.
Because it takes effort to simplify.
It takes conscious effort.
Right.
And when they stop making that effort, it's because it would take more effort for them to simplify than to just use their natural speech patterns.
And the source points out that they start using their normal native vocabulary.
Which is crucial. This includes slang, common figures of speech, cultural expressions. They use, as the source says, the whole hog.
And for anyone wondering, the whole hog just means all of it.
All of it, yeah. They give you the complete package. All the complexity, all the idiomatic richness, no hesitation. They're treating you as a peer, not a pupil.
So the initial win is that you sound fluent enough for them to assume you'll understand everything.
Yes. And this is where the test becomes an ongoing challenge. It's one thing to get them to stop accommodating.
But the real victory is being able to actually meet that challenge day after day.
To actually understand Everything they're saying at that natural speed with all the slang and the nuances, it shifts the burden of effort entirely onto you.
But now, you're finally equipped to handle it.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it means you've earned entry into the conversational flow. You're no longer seen as a language project.
You're a participant.
You're a fully functional participant whose listening comprehension is assumed to be at a native level. And that allows for real, authentic human connection, unburdened by linguistic effort.
That seamless conversational flow leads us perfectly to the final marker in this section, which is indicator 12, the accent puzzle.
The accent puzzle, yeah. This is when you know you're fluent because people can't quite place your origin.
This is all about phonetics and prosody.
Deep dive, yeah. And the goal isn't necessarily to sound exactly like a native speaker from one specific region.
Right, that can be impossible sometimes.
Impossible and often unnecessary. The real goal is to eliminate the key phonetic markers that immediately flag you as foreign or, break the auditory experience for the listener.
So the moment someone has to ask, wait, where are you from? I just can't tell from your accent.
Or when they assume you are from the country where the language is spoken.
You've crossed a major threshold. The source confirms that her Spanish accent isn't perfect, but she worked hard to lose the majority of the pronunciation errors that English speakers typically make.
Okay, let's unpack that. What are those majority of errors for an English speaker learning Spanish, for example?
I mean, their R sound is a big one.
A huge one. It's that hard vocalized R sound instead of the tapped or the rolled R. The vowels, too.
The vowels, yeah. English speakers tend to diphthongize them,
Yeah.
right? Like make two sounds out of one vowel.
Whereas Spanish vowels are usually clean, singular sounds. And then there's the stress patterns, the prosody. If you stress the wrong syllable, even with perfect vocabulary, the word just becomes incomprehensible to a native ear.
So that focused effort on just neutralizing those key phonetic issues is critical.
It is, because when the obvious errors are gone, the native speaker stops unconsciously translating what you're saying and starts focusing only on the content.
The sound of the language becomes transparent.
It becomes transparent. And this indicator is often the last barrier for advanced learners because it requires so much motor control and deeply ingrained auditory correction.
So it's not just grammar and vocab.
No, it confirms you've mastered the physical mechanism of speech, the rhythm, the stress, the subtle sounds that define the language's auditory identity. You've achieved fluency in the most audible, socially verifiable way.
All right, let's shift gears. We're moving from those external social tests to the internal cognitive shifts.
This is where the language moves into your subconscious.
It becomes a background process rather than a foreground effort.
Yeah, these are the signs that your brain is actively rewiring itself.
So our first cognitive indicator, number 2,
Yeah.
and this one is incredibly insightful and also really practical for your own training.
It is. You are fluent when you are aware of the mistakes you make and you instantly correct yourself.
This is that moment. We've all seen it or done it, where you say something and then you immediately stop, sometimes mid-sentence, and you go, no, wait, I made a mistake there, and you just fix it.
And you fix it effortlessly. It shows you know what you did wrong without anyone else telling you.
Which indicates what exactly? What's going on in the brain there?
It indicates metalinguistic awareness. We should probably unpack that a little.
Please.
Think of it as your brain developing its own internal editor or a spell check system. A beginner needs a teacher or the person they're talking to flag their errors. A fluent speaker has developed a completely operational grammar and usage checker that's just running constantly in the background.
And why is that so much more important than just not making the mistake in the first place?
Because it proves conceptual mastery. The path to mastery is so clear here. The source says, if you realize you're making mistakes, you're only one step away from just not making them at all.
Right. You've internalized the rule.
Got it. The final stage is just automating the error-free execution. If you're relying on someone else to correct you, you're still learning the rules.
But when your own neural network gives you the feedback?
It means the conceptual framework of the language is rock solid. Even if the motor output, your mouth sometimes lags, maybe you're tired or talking fast, the core knowledge base is intact. That self-correction is the hallmark of true, mature fluency. You've become your own best teacher in that moment.
That makes so much sense. And it brings us to a marker that is just pure evidence of cognitive integration. This is indicator number 3.
Passive understanding.
Passive understanding. Fluency allows you to read or hear the language and understand it without actively focusing or trying. The meaning just flows.
This is maybe the purest definition of integration. Because the language is bypassing your conscious translation filter.
Yeah.
It stops being noise that you have to decipher, and it becomes instantaneous meaning, just like your native language. The brain has automated the decoding process.
And the source gives us the perfect anecdote for this. We're calling it the tube creep.
Right.
So the speaker, who's fluent in Spanish, is riding the London Underground.
Yeah.
And as we know, British people are notoriously quiet on the tube.
Generally, yes.
But when a Spanish-speaking family gets on, they often talk quite freely.
And the speaker finds herself listening because, as she humorously admits, she's a little bit of a creep.
We've all been there.
We have. And then, about a minute later, she has this startling realization.
What's that?
Oh my God, I'm listening in another language, and I didn't even realize it. The meaning just flowed so effortlessly that her conscious mind didn't even register the language change at first.
And she says that feeling is really, really good.
It has to be. It's the ultimate confirmation that the language is now part of your background operating system. You're just absorbing information in Spanish the way you would in English.
Without deliberate focus or that conscious effort to translate.
Exactly. And we can extend this with what we could call the meme test.
The meme test.
Yeah. Imagine you're scrolling on social media. You see a culturally specific meme in your target language. You get the humor immediately, and you're desperate to show it to a friend.
Okay.
And only then do you realize the joke is so culturally specific and so language dependent that it doesn't translate into English that well.
Oh, I see.
That speed of your emotional reaction, followed by the realization that it's untranslatable, those are powerful indicators.
So if you get a joke that is so fluent, it actually resists being translated efficiently.
You have fully internalized the cultural context and the linguistic shorthand. You're not just thinking in that language structure, you are reacting and feeling in it.
Wow. Which leads us to the deepest subconscious dive we have. Indicator 6.
The classic, dreaming in the language.
This is the one everyone talks about, right?
Yeah.
The almost mythical sign of integration.
It is. Having a dream where the main dialogue happens in the language you're learning, or even dreaming about your close friends and family speaking to you in that language.
Even if they don't speak it in real life.
Even if they don't speak a word of it.
So why is dreaming so important? What does it signify?
Well, dreaming is when the brain processes and consolidates our emotional and complex memories.
Okay.
So if your target language is being used as the default medium for emotional communication within your dream world, often involving the people most intimately connected to your subconscious,
It means the language has been integrated into the core architecture of your memory and emotional centers.
that's it. The source describes this experience as very, very weird, and that strangeness is the key.
Why weird?
Because it signifies that the language has stopped being a subject you study, stored in your frontal lobe. It's become a fundamental emotional part of your identity and your inner world.
So the brain is just defaulting to the strongest available pathway.
Exactly.
Hmm.
When your mind, in its most passive state, decides that Spanish, or whatever language, is the most efficient or expressive tool for processing a dream that confirms its utility and its permanence.
Okay, indicator number 8. I love the name for this one. The deceleration of the word search.
It's a good one.
It perfectly describes the neurological mechanics of improved fluency in real time. You stop having to consciously reach for words.
Yeah, that beginner phase is defined by that hesitant, anxiety-inducing pause.
That, how do you say it? What's the word for
Right. The brain is just frantically digging through its limited, consciously retrieved database. But fluency doesn't eliminate word searching entirely.
No, of course not. The source notes that everyone reaches for a word occasionally, even in their native language. We all forget a common noun sometimes.
But fluency is marked by the deceleration of this searching.
It becomes an infrequent hiccup, rather than a constant break on the conversation.
The words are just available. It's like pulling a book from a well-organized shelf instead of digging through a cluttered attic.
What's the shift happening in the brain there?
We're talking about memory access, shifting from declarative memory, which is consciously recalling a fact, like the word for table is mesa,
Right.
to procedural memory, where the word is just deployed automatically as part of a speech action. The lexicon moves from being something you retrieve to something you simply use.
And what's fascinating is the surprise factor in this shift.
Yeah.
The speaker mentions you might even surprise yourself by knowing words that you didn't know you knew.
And she recalls internally exclaiming, "Go loose! I didn't know I knew that word."
That internal exclamation is powerful evidence.
It is. It proves that the vocabulary was acquired through passive exposure, reading, listening, just immersion, but was never consciously cataloged. It moved directly into that integrated automatic memory area.
So the mental friction is just dramatically reduced.
And the lexicon is available for rapid deployment, often exceeding your own assessment of how many words you actually know.
Which leads us to a really significant psychological shift. Indicator number 10.
This one is interesting. Initially, learners are desperate to practice at any opportunity.
Yes.
Fluency is achieved when you stop actively looking for opportunities to practice.
That initial phase is defined by desperation, isn't it? The source recalls that intense need to meet Spanish people just to talk, treating the language as the be-all and end-all. It was a constant mission.
It was.
But wait, isn't there a risk here? If you stop actively seeking out practice, what your skills decline, or at least stagnate.
That's a brilliant challenge to the idea, and it clarifies the nature of the shift. You're not stopping using the language. You're moving from the acquisition phase to the maintenance phase. The desperation is gone because the skill has stabilized and been internalized. The language is no longer the primary objective.
It's the default tool.
It's the default tool. So the speaker now says she's happy to have a chat and brush up on her rusty skills, but that intense, anxiety-driven hunt is over.
Which reveals a deep confidence.
A deep, deep confidence. You're no longer chasing the language, you're just living through it.
And from a psychological standpoint, this seems like the highest form of internalization.
I think so. You stop viewing every conversation as an opportunity for practice and start viewing it simply as a conversation about the weather, about politics, about what's for dinner.
When you're thinking about the content and not the grammar.
The language has become transparent. This stop, this cessation of the desperate search for practice, is a profound sign that the skill has stabilized and become part of your identity. You just trust the tool is there when you need it.
All right, let's move into our final section. We're looking at the concrete tasks, the practical application tests that prove real-world utility and mastery. These are the moments where the stakes are a little bit higher than just ordering a coffee.
For sure. Indicator 7 is the reality check.
What is it?
Fluency means you can do all the things a native person would do in the language without thinking about it. And these things often involve bureaucracy or critical personal care.
So we're moving beyond simple social chat and into more high-stakes or formal contexts?
We are.
The list provided is extremely practical. It's things like going to the doctor's, going to the bank, ordering stuff in a bar or cafe, and giving directions.
Why do those specific tasks separate the fluent speaker from the merely conversational one?
Well, they introduce specialized vocabulary, don't they? And complexity, unexpected variables that require flexible language use.
Absolutely. At the bank, you need to understand formal registers, maybe negotiate terms, understand precise financial language.
And at the doctor's office.
Oh, at the doctor's, you need to be able to accurately describe complex, subjective physical symptoms. You know, a throbbing ache versus a dull pressure.
Which requires a precise vocabulary that many textbooks just skip over.
Right. You can't just nod and smile through these situations. Failure has real-world consequences.
And the source adds this delightful and very human flaw here. The speaker notes that she still struggles with giving directions.
Yeah.
Not because of the language, but because she finds it difficult to tell the difference between left and right. She calls it something in my brain.
And that specific detail is maybe the most important caveat in this whole section.
Why?
It highlights that fluency is language mastery, not universal competence. Fluency won't cure your unrelated personal quirks or cognitive challenges. The directions are hard because of a struggle with spatial reasoning, not because of the Spanish words for left and right.
That's a crucial distinction. When the language fades into the background, the true non-linguistic challenges of the task emerge.
Exactly. If the language has become a transparent facilitator of function, then you're truly fluent. If your biggest worry at the bank is the interest rate and not how to conjugate the verb,
You've won.
you've won.
Okay, indicator number 9. This is a huge goal for most learners, the cinematic test.
Yes. Being able to watch a film without subtitles feels so good and indicates a really robust level of fluency.
This test integrates so many skills at once, at lightning speed. You've got rapid auditory comprehension, you've got to distinguish regional accents.
Which are far more diverse in film and TV than in your casual conversations.
You have contextual processing of slang and the ability to track a complex, multi-layered story without the crutch of text.
When you take away the subtitles, your brain is forced to focus entirely on auditory input.
And if you can maintain, say, 80 to 90% comprehension.
It proves your ear is calibrated to the natural speed and rhythm of native dialogue. And beyond that, the cultural benefit is enormous. This action, it opens up a whole new world of art.
Because you're no longer relying on a translation or an interpretation, which often just flattens the cultural texture and misses subtle cues in the dialogue.
You get the joke, you get the insult, the historical reference, exactly as a writer intended.
And I guess consuming native media directly allows for continuous, deeper, passive learning about the culture.
For sure. The unspoken customs, the interaction styles, the fashion, native reactions, all the contextual clues that are often lost or just sterilized in translated works. Achieving this means your ears and your brain are fully synchronized to the language's complex, real-world narrative form.
Okay, our final indicator, and this one is perhaps the most modern and maybe the most validating. Number 11,
Correcting the algorithm.
correcting the algorithm. True fluency is knowing when electronic translation services like Google Translate are wrong.
And not just knowing they're wrong, but correcting them and recognizing just how many errors they actually make.
This proves your cognitive superiority over the machine.
It does. You are no longer reliant on the tool. You are the quality control mechanism that verifies its output.
So translation services are good at literal, semantic meaning.
Excellent at it. But they consistently fail at nuance, emotional context, idiomatic usage, and understanding intent.
And the speaker, because she used to be a teacher, shares this hilarious and instructional anecdote, the teacher's secret.
Right. Students would hand in these essays that were obviously using Google Translate.
And the giveaway wasn't always the awkward phrasing. Sometimes it was when the students misspelled a word in their own native language before they pasted it in.
And because the translation service couldn't process the typo in the source language,
It would just leave random gobbledygook in the middle of a sentence in the target language.
that garbled section is the machine's failure point. It relies on dictionary lookup and pattern matching. It has no mechanism for human inference.
But a human fluent speaker, especially a teacher, can look at that garbled mess and instantly know what the student meant to say.
What the correct phrasing should have been, and exactly why the algorithm failed.
So this test validates that your mastery extends into the subtleties of human communication and intent.
Things like cultural inference and emotional load. Things the machine still struggles with deeply. When you can spot those contextual or idiomatic errors made by a sophisticated electronic system, it proves your human fluency is fully independent and superior.
So we've reached the end of our deep dive into this fascinating list of 12 unexpected fluency tests.
We have.
And we've seen that true fluency is this rich tapestry, really.
Mhm.
It's woven from deep cognitive shifts like, dreaming in the language and passive listening,
Social finesse, like knowing how to use slang and humor.
and practical independence, like
Mhm.
correcting translation tools and handling those essential bureaucratic tasks.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner?
Yeah.
It means fluency isn't a single monolithic achievement. It's not a certificate you hang on the wall. It's a living, breathing set of internal and external experiences that just accumulate over time. It's about being able to move through the world in that language without noticeable friction.
And the benchmarks aren't some arbitrary grammar rules. They're these moments of realization.
Mm-hmm.
The shock of overhearing a conversation without any effort. The profound pride of understanding a joke that resists easy translation.
Or that quiet confidence of knowing the digital algorithm is flawed because you possess real human context.
If we step back and look at the whole picture, what do you think is the most profound indicator we discussed?
For me, it has to be the shift in priority. That's indicator 10. Moving from desperately seeking practice opportunities to simply having the language available as a functional tool.
Right.
If you aren't actively thinking about practicing the language, but you're simply using it to order a coffee or watch a film or navigate the tube, you've fundamentally made the leap.
That really is the ultimate goal. Language as a transparent utility. A completely automated mechanism that serves your goals rather than becoming the goal itself.
And so we encourage you to consider this question as you move forward.
What's that?
What area of your life would benefit most if that language became purely functional and effortless for you? Is it enjoying native language cinema? Or is it finally mastering that bureaucratic visit to the bank? Start there.
Take this checklist. Think about which of these 12 situations you've already experienced, and then decide which one you're going to aim for next.
Keep track of your progress.
And you'll find you are far more fluent than any multiple choice test could ever tell you.